Okay, whenever you're multiplying a binomial times another binomial, so you have two terms times two terms, you always use the FOIL method. And remember, that just tells you what order you go in. The F stands for first, so the first terms. The O stands for outer. The I stands for inner, and the L stands for last. So you do the first terms together first, then you do the outer terms, then you do the inner terms, and then you do the last terms of each binomial. So for example, if you have x plus 3 times x plus 4, I'm going to use the FOIL method. So you do first times first. X times x is x squared. Next, you do the outer ones. The two on the outside are x and 4. So x times 4 is 4x. So plus 4x. And then you do the two on the inside. 3 times x is plus 3x. And then last times last, 3 times 4 is plus 12. And then you can combine your two middle terms. 4x plus 3x is 7x. So it's x squared plus 7x plus 12. Okay, another example. 5x plus 9 squared. 5x plus 9 squared. Now this means you're multiplying 5x plus 9 times 5x plus 9. So you're going to multiply the first times the first together, which will be 25x squared. Then you multiply the outer together. 5x times 9 is 45x. And then you multiply the inner ones together. 9 times 5x is 45x. And then last times last, 9 times 9 is 81. So this is 25x squared plus 90x plus 81 when you combine your two like terms. Now there's actually a shortcut to doing that type of problem. If we look at this, you notice that this first term right here is always just that first term squared, right? 25x squared is the same thing as 5x squared. The last term right here is just the 9 squared. Now you notice on the middle terms, so we got the same thing when we did the outer and the inner. So you could get the middle term by multiplying the two terms together, the 5x and the 9, so that gives you the 45x, and doubling that, and that would give you the middle term. So now let's look at the formula for squaring a binomial. You can always do it the way we just did it. You can always write it out twice and do the FOIL method if you want to. This is just a shortcut that you can use if you want to. So squaring a binomial. Squaring a binomial. If you have a plus b squared, the formula for squaring that is a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. If you have a minus b squared, the formula for squaring that is a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So that's just a shortcut. Instead of having to write it down twice and FOIL it, you can use the shortcut. So let's work that same problem that we just did using the shortcut. 5x plus 9 squared. So the shortcut says, and this is like the first one, that you square the first term. So if you square 5x, 5x times 5x is 25x squared. So that's your first term. Now, to get the middle term to get the middle term, what you do is you multiply these two right here together, the 5x and the 9, and you double it. And you know when you double something, that means you multiply it by 2, right? So you're going to multiply the 5x times the 9, which gives you 45x, and then multiply that times 2. 45x times 2 would be 90x. So the middle term would be 90x. And that's the trickiest part, is just finding that middle term. And all you have to do is multiply the two terms together and multiply that by 2. And that gives you the middle term every time. And then to get the last term, you're just going to square the 9. So plus 81. So that's how you would do that when using the shortcut. Okay, let's look at one more like that. 2x minus 1 squared. And we're going to use the shortcut. But remember, if you forget the shortcut on the test or when you're doing homework, you can always write it down twice and FOIL it out. Okay, well, let's do the shortcut. If you multiply 2x times itself, 2x times 2x is 4x squared. So when you square the first term, you get 4x squared. Now, to get the middle term, you're going to multiply the 2x and the negative 1 together and double it, or multiply it by 2. So 2x times negative 1 is negative 2x. And if you multiply that times 2, that would give you negative 4x. So the middle term is negative 4x. See, 2 times 1 is 2, times 2 is 4, so it's going to be negative 4x. And then you square your last term. Negative 1 times itself is plus 1. And that's the answer. So see, you square the first term, then you multiply the two terms together, and then double that. And then you square the last term. All right, now let's look at one like this. We're going to be multiplying it's two binomials, but one is a sum and one is a difference. So let's look at this. 9x plus y times 9x minus y. So see, you have the same terms, but you're adding one and you're subtracting the other. So same terms, opposite signs. Now let's just do it using the FOIL method, because you can do that. So if we use the FOIL method, 9x times 9x is 81x squared. When you multiply the outer ones together, 9x times negative y is negative 9xy. The inner ones, y times 9x is plus 9xy. And then last times last is minus y squared. Now those middle two are going to cancel out, because negative 9 plus 9 is 0. So that cancels out. So you just have 81x squared minus y squared. Now anytime you have one that's like this, where you have the same terms, but you have opposite signs, one's a plus and one's a minus, the outer and inner is always going to cancel out. You won't have a middle term. So what you can do on one like this, if you recognize that it's in that form, you can skip multiplying the outer and inner. You don't have to do that step. You can just do the first times the first and the last times the last. But realize they have to have opposite signs. One has to be plus and one has to be minus. Okay? So your formula for this, if you have a plus b times a minus b, that's just equal to a squared minus b squared every time, because the outer and inner are going to cancel out. So let's look at some examples using that formula. So remember, we don't have to do the outer and inner because of the form that it's in. A times a is a squared, and 7 times negative 7 is minus 49. That's all you have to do on those kinds. You can skip the outer and inner. It has to be in that form, though. You just do first times first and last times last. All right, if you have 4x plus 5 times 4x minus 5. First times first would be 16x squared. Remember, you can skip the outer and inner. 5 times negative 5 is minus 25. So that would just be 16x squared minus 25. Okay, does anybody have any questions on anything in this section? Most of it is pretty much the same thing that we did in the last section in 5.3. The only difference is the two shortcuts that we went over, squaring a binomial, and then when you have the sum and difference of two terms.